If you made a list of the 15 things you do, 20 things you do on a weekly basis, you may hate 7 of them. You can build a world around you where you don't do any of those things. Saying that out loud should hopefully give some of you some inspiration. The second thing is you don't have to follow the same path that every other team does. If you're an agent, a successful agent who loves just helping people, but has extreme ambitions, there's another way to do this.
Jimmy, dude, so excited to do this with you, and I want to kick off this with a question that I think you and I were just talking about off camera, and the idea of how do people do kind of deep, meaningful, chunky work.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd love your perspective on this because it's super easy to get into a marketing campaign and say, hey, let me bust out this email from a Jimmy drop. Hey, let me take this deal of the week and send it out. And let me make 3 calls and feel better that I got some traction. What is, in your opinion, agent of today wants to make chunky progress, maybe in their marketing, in their skill set, in their domination, in their farm, in their overall brand? How does somebody kind of start this process of doing kind of chunky work so that they can see progress?
The first thing that jumps out to me, I'll tell you my process because I've thought a lot about this, and I spent a lot of time trying to avoid the gravitational pull towards mediocrity, which is, I think, if you're in business or if you're successful, you start to, for whatever reason, you start to become less, tolerant of risk. You start to become, in many ways, you narrow your scope of interest, and you kind of become too fixated and too focused, and you lose some of that kind of early startup kind of bravery and curiosity and boldness. And so I love the quote from Jason Fried, who's a mentor from afar for me. Jason Fried is founder of Basecamp and Hey and a few other digital products. And he says, the job of a CEO is to inject risk into a business, which is so counterintuitive to the way that most of us think, which is you think about the job of a CEO is to avoid risk. And it's like, no, your job is to inject risk. And so to answer your question directly, how do you kind of get into the mode of sort of this deep thinking and deep learning? The first thing is that I have got to be inspired to do good work. I mean, and what, like, I've got to, so in order for me to do that, I have to start with an abundance of curiosity about a particular topic. So I never, most people have a to-do list. Here's what I'm going to be covering that day. And this is probably going to cause a lot of people who are watching this podcast a lot of anxiety and how disorganized this truly is. And disorganized is probably not the right word, Sharran, but it's probably more like just how unstructured this is. But I am always trying to get inspired before I do work. So that sources of inspiration may be listening to a fantastic podcast. And I have a laundry list of people that I follow. A source of inspiration might be reading a white paper on some type of psychological study. Like this weekend, I feel like such a loser admitting this, but this weekend I was reading through this 60-page psychological study done in 1975 that was mentioned on a podcast that I was listening to on the topic of how to make things interesting. Mm-hmm. And I was like, and the title of the paper is called "That's Interesting." And so it goes into depth about how, why we perceive things as interesting as humans. And so I think for me, before you really get into deep work, yes, having a vision, yes, knowing what you're working on, yes, knowing what you're focused on, all of that matters. But that's like the beginning of it. What does a day-to-day look like? You've got to get, and for me, I think you just got to get inspired. And so I'm constantly, if you think of my swipe file of inspiration, it is growing by the day. Mm-hmm. And that really gets me in the mode where I'm excited to do some good work. And I think for me, my mantra for this past year has been, someone asked me, he goes, my buddy was texting me, what's your plan this year? And my plan was build cool shit with no meetings. That's my plan this year. And so to get into that mode, you got to get inspired. And so you got to create an environment where that becomes commonplace.
I love that so much. I love the seed of inspiration. I'll tell you something. I try to work on that often, and I don't hit it a lot. And I'll tell you a big part for me is I'm not. You'll snicker, but I'm not a very talented dude. But I have a gift, and my gift is I have insane work ethic.
Mm-hmm.
And that now I'm not saying I work hard. I'm just, what I say is like, I have capacity to do a lot of work.
Yeah.
And so I can stay concentrating and focused for a long period of time. And I can work 12, 13 hours a day and come home and feel refreshed. And so a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times if I'm cranky at home, my wife will tell me, you either need to go work or go sell something. You'll feel better. And so
Yeah.
she's like, you're just cranky. And,
Yeah.
and one of the things, one of my coaches said early on to me was, she said to me, one of the ways in which you end up doing better work, deeper work, more meaningful work is to think about your life in decades. So I call this the thematic decades. So
Mm-hmm.
I asked myself, what do I kind of want to do in my 20s?
Yeah.
What do I want to do in my 30s? What do I want to do in my 40s? And a lot of that is, it provides some directional guidance, which I
Yep.
think is super helpful, because now
Sure.
when you're randomly scrolling through Instagram and say, like in my 30s, I was very sick. And so my big theme for my 30s was, I just want to get healthy. So if you, dude, even if you actually scroll back, if I scroll back to my Instagram post from like 8 years ago, or Facebook post from 8 years ago, you will see me physically look unhealthy. Like I'm bloated. I just
Mm-hmm.
was not healthy. And so focusing on that was good. But based on that, when you start to see articles, or just call it reticular activation, right? So that is my kind of directional theme. So I start to see more things associated with that thing, which I think is super interesting. The
Mm-hmm.
second is, there's a lot more of folks doing kind of to-do list based work. And I
Mm-hmm.
call it like the pull based system, which is like, hey, I've got these 17 things. I'm going to pull one thing to work on.
Yeah.
And that's interesting to me, because it seems very orthogonal to time, because
Mm-hmm.
time is the only kind of fixed function we have. And so we're like, oh crap, what's next? So let me kind of force that into my world. I think about the world a little differently, where I say, I use kind of broader time blocking ideas, and I look at my calendar and I say, I got a call with Jimmy, and I got a couple other things, but I have 2 2-hour blocks. Now, in these
Yeah.
2 2-hour blocks, what do I want to do, and where can I make the most progress? And I pull that stuff in, and that's
Yeah.
all I work on in those blocks. So now I know that I made a very specific choice to work on those blocks, and when I'm done, because I made a
Mm-hmm.
choice to work on those things. And so I think for a lot of people, it is start the day with a to-do list of 8 things, check off 6 things, add 14 more things, and then feel bad that you didn't get to any of the things. In fact, you actually
Yeah.
made a lot of progress.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
so just reframing your relationship with tasks and projects is really powerful. And you can see the quote on my wall, which says, "To do great things, we must do fewer things."
Mm-hmm.
And I think about that thing a lot, which is, if I'm stressed, if I'm feeling overwhelmed, I just say, okay, what can be one fewer thing I can do? And if I can
Yeah.
just take that off, so it's not like I need more time, I need more space. I just need to do one fewer thing, because the best way to finish a project is to stop doing it.
It's funny to hear you say that, because I'm thinking of one of my favorite quotes from Jeff Bezos when he said, a lot of people ask the question, what's going to change in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah,
And he goes, I ask the question, what's not going to change?
yeah,
And the thinking of that is like, what is going to be, what do we have a high degree of confidence in it's going to still be the same in the next 10 years? And why aren't we working every day towards becoming better at that, or adding more value in that space? And when I think about the world of business, like you and I are very similar, although we're so different in many ways. So I don't think people realize that. Uh, but the thing is that the thought that I've been having lately, and I'd love to get your reaction to this, is in terms of like directionally, what am I trying to build here for myself? Like for Jimmy Inc. I think about two things. I think about first, attention, and second, monetization.
mhm,
And so like those, so everything I'm saying is, how do I increase the attention that I get?
mhm,
And then how do I develop value and services and products to monetize that attention? And in many ways, when I think about organizing my day, my week, my month, my quarter, my year, I think about it in that context,
mhm.
which is, what can I do to increase the attention I get? And then what can I do to add value to be able to monetize that attention? And I think right now, most people who are probably going to listen to this podcast are going to be in the real estate industry. I think right now they're working towards kind of these one-off things, and they're not sort of building towards something larger. And that's why, and I'll tell you a telltale sign. I'll tell you a telltale sign is that if the last dollar you made was as hard as the first dollar you made,
Mm.
then chances are you're stuck in sort of that like
Good.
that rut that we all get into. Because the last dollar you should make should be 10x, 100x easier than the first dollar you made.
Mm-hmm.
And I think and that tells me that you're not building towards something that has scale, that has efficiency, that has some type of compounding effect.
Dude, I'm in full agreement with that. About 4 or 5 years ago, pre-COVID, I had this thought, which is very similar to yours, used a lot better articulated than mine, is that fame is the most efficient business model. And it I still kind of shudder when I say those words, because
Mm-hmm.
it feels like it's laced with some kind of
Ego.
ego in it, right?
Sure.
However, when I think about fame, I think about endorsed distribution. That's all I think
Yeah.
about. So
Mm-hmm.
if you can write an email that says, "Hey, my friend Sharran has this great podcast that we did together. We both kind of shared the best of what we got. You should go check this out." That's really interesting because now you and I have the ability to drive endorsed distribution to this asset. But you and I both know that there's probably 13,000 other podcast episodes that are out there already pre-recorded right now that
Mm-hmm.
are probably never going to get more than 12 views, that are just as good or better because they
Mm-hmm.
don't have endorsed distribution. Just
Yeah.
like just like how many books are there that don't have distribution? Just like how many apps were built that no one ever downloaded? There's some pretty amazing things that have been built, created, and designed that we people could not bring endorsed distribution to.
Yeah.
And I think that's I think about that a lot because in a lot of ways it's super important for that. And I'll tell you why from our context about this is I recorded this video the other day, and sometimes you're in flow when you say random things, and this was as close to random as I got. And I said, in today's world, especially in the real estate business, a leader without a platform is like a samurai without a sword.
Mm-hmm.
And I got questioned on why, and the why is, if you're a leader in this world right now and you have a set of ideas and you don't have a platform to share them, then you can't operationalize generosity. That's the
Mm-hmm.
interesting part for me. So our responsibility of having a distribution platform is that I think we are required is an interesting word, to operationalize generosity. Like you and I have a thought, an idea, something that we
Sure.
want to share, give, build, grow. We have now a way to distribute this. And
Yeah.
uh, there are leaders in our space right now that don't have a platform. So they could be in their ivory towers having these great ideas, wanting to change the world, impacting agents, impacting brokers, impacting the industry, but no one's going to listen to them because they don't have distribution. And
Yeah.
so when you talk about attention and monetization of that attention, I think there's this wrapper of generosity that is wrapped around it, because it's not like Jimmy's getting attention and he's selling something. It's not that at all. But Jimmy's
Sure.
getting attention, but now he's able to endorse something that's really valuable for the person listening, which I think is insanely powerful.
You know what? And I think so the audience, for anyone who listens to this podcast, I saw a tweet, by the way, just to reinforce what you said. It said first time founders obsess over product, second time founders obsess over distribution. And I think it really kind of encaps. And by the way, for distribution, just for those of you who are going to listen to this, what we mean by that is we mean how many subscribers do you have to your YouTube channel? How many people do you have following you on Instagram who are connected to your broadcast channel? How many people are on your email list? How many visitors are coming to your website organically? These are distribution channels. How many people in your farm are regularly receiving communication from you? And so these are just ways in which you can get your message in front of people, ways in which you can establish some type of value, build some type of connection, in hopes of when they do need some help, they're going to think of you. The world's a busy and noisy place. I think Brian, at the 1,001 event that you and I were at, Brian said to me, and I don't want to misquote him, I said, Brian, how many people does the average consumer, how many agents does the average consumer know? He goes, Jimmy, they know 13 agents on average. And I
That's
thought to
insane.
myself, like, I don't think I know 13 people locally in my area. I know 13 people. I'm like, that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so I say that as I have like 30 people in my immediate family. So besides them, but I just love the idea. I love the idea of making things so insanely simple so that when you're being pulled, like, I think people don't appreciate this, Sharran. I'd love to get your reaction to it. I think when you get really focused, people tend to focus on, oh, this means like when you wake up, you know exactly what to do. But that's actually not the real benefit. The real benefit, the real magic, the real secret sauce is you now know what not to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so you get to say no a lot more. And
Mm-hmm.
when you get on phone calls with people and you're having conversations with partnerships and vendors, whatever it is, like, hey, here's my goal. I want to be clear. Here's my goal. Here's what I'm trying to do. And then when they discuss we should work together, you now have like, okay, now they know your goal and then they can help support that or not. Either way, they're aligned with what your vision is. So I think the power of focus and the power of having that clarity gives you the ability not only just to do the deep work that we started this podcast talking about, but also gives you the ability to like stiff arm the countless opportunities that typically come your way as you're growing your businesses.
Well, dude, I actually am in full agreement with that because I think the tipping point of courage happens when you and I can get to a point and say, this is my not to-do list.
Mm-hmm.
Because it takes a lot of courage to say, I am not focusing on all of these things, or I'm not focusing on anything that is unrelated to this. You're drawing a line in the sand and saying, this is my focus. In a lot of ways, when I talk about thematic decades, it's just giving me some direction. In my 30s, if it was not related to optimizing my health, I just didn't care about it.
Yeah.
I was like, this is irrelevant. I don't care about it at all. And so did I make a little less money in my 30s? Yeah. But did I used a decade to get healthier so that it allows me to do what I want to do in my 40s. It's insanely powerful. The
Sure.
second thing that I've been thinking a lot about is this idea of wanting what you want. And so, for example, someone will say, well, Sharran, my goal is to get a beach house. I really want a beach house because I can do XYZ. I can take my children. I can have, some time and space away. It'll show me as being successful, et cetera, right? And I said, do you want a beach house for those reasons, or do you just want a beach house?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't have to, the best wants are the wants that we don't have to justify. It's not like I want a Lambo because it's just, I want a Lambo. And so I've been asking myself this question, can I just stop with, I want blank and period? Do I have to justify with a because? And why is this world getting me to say a because? And that gotten insanely freeing because I can say, like, for example, I want to buy the Anaheim Ducks. Like, there's no because. Like, who cares what I want it?
Sure.
Now,
Sure.
you may be interested in it as a story, but outside of that, at the end of the day, I have to go home still wanting the Ducks. And so this wanting what you want feels like this thing that I've been, anytime I say I want, I'm really forcing myself to not add a rationalization after it. I'm curious how you react to that.
Well, I do such little self-reflection. Maybe because I grew up Irish Catholic. All right. So we suppress all of our feelings. But I will tell you that I think at the end of the day, we all are looking for agency.
Yes.
Which is we're all looking to be able to control what we want to control and live the lives we want to live in some form or fashion. And I completely agree with the sentiment that there's no need to have the word because. If you want something, you want something. And chances are, by the way, for the people who are listening to this podcast right now, I'll tell you, I'll give you some practical advice here because I've gone through lots of transitions over the last 12 months in different aspects of my business and my personal life. And the thing that I think is so important in this process is that sometimes we tell ourselves a story that we have to suffer to do something great. And I don't know why that has been a narrative that's existed, but I'll tell you right now, some of the crazy, most successful people I've interfaced with, these fucking people are super happy. I mean, like all the time. They're like loving what they're doing. I'm like, I'm out here suffering. I'm out here working my ass off. And I feel like these people are 100 times more successful than I am. And I think sometimes there are parts of our lives that we do because we feel like we have to do them because at some point we told ourselves a story that this is what is required to be great. And what I've noticed about certain types of people, not all, but certain types of people, they have chosen not to do that. and it seems like, oh, wait a second. I didn't even realize that was a choice not to do that thing that I hate to do. And so I've gotten to a point, listen, I don't want this to turn into a therapy session between you and me, Sharran, here, as we're sitting on the couch analyzing the last 12 months. But I will say, I think there's something magical that happens when you realize that you do not have to do the things that you hate doing. And I think that is I know it sounds so like, oh, that such an epiphany, Jimmy, on a podcast. Like, no, I actually think for the business owners who are listening to this, real estate agents who are listening to this, you probably have, if you made a list of the 15 things you do, 20 things you do on a weekly basis, you may hate 7 of them. You can build a world around you where you don't do any of those things. But you got to believe that. If you don't believe that, then you're going to be stuck doing those things. And what happens is it pulls you away from your circle of genius. And I'll give you a real world example of this. I was listening to Brian Chesky, who is one of my favorite founders, founder of Airbnb. He runs a publicly traded company today. I think they're probably at, I don't know, Sharran, $80 billion, $90 billion market cap. And so this guy's my age. Okay. So he's in his late 30s. And when he became not just a founder CEO of a startup, but a CEO of a publicly traded company, everybody around him was saying, well, this is how you have to act. This is how you have to operate. It was like an episode of the show Bridgerton, where they're like preparing him for the grand unveiling to the public markets. And he's like, he because he was inexperienced, he was like, yeah, sure, I'll do all these things. And then what he found out is that over time, over a short period of time, because Brian's a smart dude, he's like, all the things I'm really good at, I stripped away. And now I'm doing all these things that other people told me I should be doing. And I'm not having nearly the impact I once had. He's like, I don't have to fit into the status quo of a traditional publicly traded CEO. I can do whatever the hell I want within certain limitations. And I think that is a story that we need to be telling in real estate, because right now in real estate, if you think about the trajectory here, Sharran, you become a top producing agent, you get some success in this business, then what happens? Oh, someone says, hey, Sharran, you should start a real estate team. Start a team. You're like, great idea. I get a bunch of agents that are now I can manage. So wait a second. You're telling me I can work harder, right? Have more stress and make less money. Sign me up. So they start a real estate team. And then what happens is they realize very quickly, either they love being a coach, GM, or they absolutely hate it. But many of them stick around because their ego is associated with their overall production. And what I think we're going to see is the rise of what I'm calling not the super app, but the super agent. An individual top producing agent who has 4, 5, 6 people around them that support them in every. It sounds crazy. Like what a like top heavy organization, right? It's all these people that at the agent is. If you can visualize this, Sharran, the agent's at the center of it. That top agent, like, so in this case, let's say it's you, and you're surrounded by people who just set you up to stay in your circle of genius. And I think we're seeing glimmers of that right now. So what I'm getting at here is this idea that you don't have to do things that you hate, first and foremost. Saying that out loud should hopefully give some of you some inspiration. The second thing is you don't have to follow the same path that every other team does. And I think that if you're an agent, a successful agent who loves just helping people, and but has extreme ambitions, there's another way to do this.
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone's talking about this, Sharran, and I do think there's a path towards this.
Well, I want to talk about that. I'll tell you, as soon as you share that, I'll tell you the story that came to mind. Like 5 years ago, I had this idea, and I actually had this challenge where I talked to my wife, and I said to her, I said, honey, I have this idea for us to make a lot of money. And she says, what do I have to do? I said, well, you have to become a front-facing personality. And she's like, what do you mean? I said, you have to get your real estate license, and you have to make 1 video a day. I will script you the video. You have to make 1 video a day. You don't have to go on appointments. You don't have to take phone calls. You don't have to show houses. You don't have to write listing calls. You have to do nothing. I just need you to be the face, and I will give you 1 video a day to make, and you have to do nothing. And I will run a multi-million-dollar empire on the back end around this. And that was the super agent model, right? She is the super agent, and I would have built this entire ecosystem to support her. And knowing what's on her not to do list, she said, she's like, that's not for me, right? Yes. So this is a hard turn, which is from a tactical perspective, agent watching and agent listening saying, hey, I've been told that I should talk to more people. I should have more conversations. I should send out more marketing materials. I should do email because Jimmy and Sharran love email. I should be online on social media because it gets me a brand. I should probably start a YouTube channel. I should start a podcast. I'm just not good at these things. I don't want to do these things. If it's that agent with that mindset and they know that they have to drive more conversations, but they don't want to do certain types of marketing activities and they end up doing it and they end up hating it. And so they
Yeah.
just quit 3-4 months later. How do you react to that? And how do you talk to that person?
So just so I'm clear, you're saying for the person who is being told they need to do A, B, and C and D, and reluctantly does it, but hates it and feels like there's a different way.
Correct.
Uh, the biggest mistake. So I've built a couple companies in this industry, and some more successful than others. And the biggest mistake I made, and this is something as every, this is going to sound obvious, but every future business that I built in this industry, I'm gonna reverse the way in which I hire, which is I used to hire when I started Curator as an example 12 years ago. Uh, we hired all junior people to offload kind of the initial administrative work required to run the business. And then we realized, oh well, we got to manage these people, we got to train these people, we got to support these people, we got to develop OKRs for these people, we have to hold them accountable, we have to, and then like before we knew it, we're like, oh shit, we got to like be business owners at this stage. It didn't make any sense. Um, that's not what experienced entrepreneurs do. Experienced entrepreneurs hire the top layer first, and they let the top layer build out the rest of the org chart. And so, if I was listening to this podcast, and let's say I was looking to, I was drawn to this sort of super agent model. I'll tell you right now, Sharran, the first role I would hire for, and I'm going to assume this person is okay posting to social media and communicating, because I just don't think outsourcing that stuff really makes a ton of sense. The first role I'm actually going to hire for is so crazy that people are going to hate it, but I would hire a research assistant is the first role. And the reason why is because we live in a world where we mentioned earlier, like whoever can attract the most attention or get the most distribution has the biggest chance to monetize that.
Mm-hmm.
The currency of attention is content.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you put content into the machine, you kick out money. So if you had a research assistant who is analyzing the market, empowering you with interesting and unique data, and then creating sort of narratives that you then can share across all the different channels, you would realize this person has incredible leverage.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, incredible leverage. And so, yeah, like people are watching, they go, oh, Jimmy, I want to be better on YouTube. I want to send better emails. I want to be more engaging on Instagram. Well, you have to have something to say that is unique and interesting. And so you say, well, how do I do that? Well, you either do the research yourself, or you hire somebody whose only job is to feed you this information. And the expression that we used to use at Curator was, let the talent be the talent. And so it's almost like we think if you're comfortable getting on camera and you're comfortable, let's say, stating your opinion to the world, then support yourself with a research assistant. And by the way, you find out, this is what people don't realize, Sharran, you and I both know this. Name one of the 10 most popular podcasts in the world, and I'll tell you, every one of those podcasters has a research assistant. Yeah. Like period. It's not someone just showing up and just doing, like, I mean, they have a production, they have a research, like, I mean, so just let me summarize this, Sharran, and get your reaction. Your org chart dictates your output. And so build an org chart that gets the output you want to create, as opposed to just adding it on top of your own shoulders.
I had no idea you were going to go this direction. However, I am insanely in alignment because it is entirely about Moneyball.
Mm-hmm.
You had Billy Beane, who, for those of you who don't know, Moneyball was this research-based approach that Billy Beane, the legendary general manager, made the Oakland A's one of the most profitable teams in Major League Baseball. But Billy Beane had Peter Brand. Peter Brand was an economics major from Yale And all he did was saying, hey, we should not be buying players, we should be buying runs.
Mm-hmm.
That is the entire theme of the movie. Without Peter Brand, there was no Billy Bean. And
Yep.
I think, and that was the heart of Moneyball. And what you're saying is, hey, listen, we live in this age where we have ubiquitous access to data, but not the associated insights and intelligence from it. If
Yeah.
you could have somebody that mines that, then the process of content creation gets so much better. Jimmy, can you imagine if someone was researching for us and said, "Hey, Sharran, here is a video that you should make, and it tells you why rates are not going to drop in the next 3 years." And
Crazy. Yeah.
I would crush the video, crush the email, crush the podcast. I would crush
Yeah.
everything because
Yeah.
this Peter Brand in my world, the research assistant, gave me a piece of information that made the execution of this topic fascinating and motivating. And I
I'll give you an example of this, Sharon. No one's talking about this. So at the end of last year, I predicted that the number of cancellations was going to rise
yeah,
significantly.
I saw your
You
post.
saw
Yep.
that story, right? Like, and say, hey, it's not because the market's going to soften so much. It's because consumers have become conditioned to home selling so quickly that the moment a house doesn't sell within the first 30 days, 60 days, the consumer's going to say something's broken, and they're going to start shopping around for another agent. I was talking to Ren Jones, CEO of Espresso Agent, this past week. He goes, Jimmy, the number of expires has doubled
Doubled.
in the last 12 months. I don't think it's unreasonable, Sharon, to say it's going to double again in the next 12 months at this stage. Now, here's where it gets interesting, and I'll shoot a reel on this at some point later today, which is if the number of expireds has doubled in the last 12 months, and it's going to say double again in the next 12 months, well, I guarantee the number of agents who are doing expired marketing hasn't doubled in the last 12 months. It's probably not going to double again in the next 12 months, which creates this blue ocean opportunity for agents to add to arbitrage the expired marketing, because where it once was, let's say, overly saturated, 18, 17, 16, now it's become sort of this forgotten gem that we can pursue. Now, I had to go out there and have a conversation with Ren Jones to learn that this happened. But if you had a research assistant and say, Jimmy, by the way, this is happening, like you just said, hey, rates are not going to change. I mean, that is I've been looking for this role, to be clear. I just haven't found the right person. I just think people really underplay how insanely useful that would be once you understand that we're in the attention game, and people who have interesting and unique insight. That's what gets people to not swipe, not scroll, right? I mean, that's the thing that people maybe just don't appreciate how incredibly important that it really is.
So let's implement this for our listeners.
Yeah,
Um, we have there are five potential expireds in my marketplace, or say there's expired, they're off market right now.
yeah,
Um, let's talk about a couple ideas on how we can have agents approach them, market to them, etc. So I'll start as you kind of think through this.
sure,
The the easiest way is to, again, this is and for those listening, you'll notice Jimmy and I are very demand gen, direct response focused in how we think about the world, because we believe that once you get a conversation, hopefully you're in that conversation, you can make magic out of that conversation. But our job is not to denigrate the competition or disparage anybody, to put anybody down to get that appointment. That would be weird. So the old school methodology, I think, of we have succeeded where they have failed, I think works, but it's not my jam in a lot of
mm-hmm.
ways. What I would offer is knowing the expired age consumer's mindset associated with this, because they're, like you said, they're like, hey, my home didn't sell fast enough. Did I make the right choice? What do I do now? Is it off the market? Wait a minute, what does expired even mean? They just don't understand this stuff.
Yeah,
So one of the things that I would offer is some way of contacting them, maybe a call, a text, a door knock, what have you, but lead with this, which is what were they looking for? They were looking for a buyer. So almost say, hey Jimmy, my name is Sharran. I work with Real right here in Laguna Beach. I'm actually not looking to take on your listing at all. So I just immediately reduce that,
mm-hmm.
right? And then I say, we have three home buyers in the marketplace, and they asked me to leave no stone unturned. So I talked to them about potential homes that have been on the market, and I saw yours was on the market. Are you planning on putting it back on the market sometime in the near future? And just stop, right? So now
Mm-hmm.
they're like, yeah. And the general answer you'll get is, yeah, but we're open to any offers that we would get or some version of that, right? And then you say, hey, I'm happy to see if this is a good fit for one of my clients. Are the current photos that are available on Zillow or online, are they the most current ones? And then they'll say yes, no, or maybe. And then you say, cool, why don't I run this by them and then call you back to see if they're interested in a 4-bedroom, 4-bath in Laguna Beach? Great, awesome. You're done. That conversation is over, because then you turn around and follow up with a text message saying, hey, Jimmy, thank you for spending time with us today. You said that you'd still be open to selling your home at the original list price of 1.7 million,
Mm-hmm.
and that your current photos are actually pretty close to where the home is right now. I'll run it by my buyers and get back to you. If you just did that, now you've followed up with a call, then you can come back with a text saying, hey, two of my buyers are potentially interested. Would you be open to a quick showing of the home with you present in it under 5 minutes? Or would you rather take an iPhone tour that I can send it to them? Now I'm
Mm-hmm.
making it super believable,
Yep.
right? And then the third thing I would say after that is, whether however the conversation goes, people are so focused on getting that listing, they don't realize that you want them to hire you before they've hired you. And this is
Yeah.
the last part where I go to, which is, hey, while our buyers are kind of stewing on how to look at this home, would you be open to me actually exposing your home to the other buyers in my list? I do something called the deal of the week, and I'd love to
Mm-hmm.
feature you. Can I show you a sample of what I do?
Mm-hmm.
Now I've had 3 distinct interactions with them. I've dramatically reduced sales resistance because I'm not pitching them on, let me show you how I can list your home better. I've shown them exactly what they want from a buyer perspective, and I'm in rapport, I'm in conversation, because you know that all conversion happens in conversation. And now I can talk to them, I can text them, I can have a
Yeah.
conversation with them. Heck, their former listing agent probably is not even getting a hold of them, but we are. So in a very small way, just appealing to what they want and stepping out of that, I want to get this listing appointment, just tweaking that approach, I think goes a long way.
Yeah, there's a lot that I love about this. The first thought is there's a guy by the name of Jeremy Miner who has
Yep.
this concept called high status, low status.
Yep.
And so an example of low, like, and we use a lot of low status stuff in our sales scripts because we think that they're going to be effective. And in fact, it just makes us look desperate and cheesy and pushy and aggressive. So low, hey, Sharran, you get a few minutes? Let's have a quick conversation. Like, no, right? Like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm sorry to bother you. I know you're really busy right now. Can you chat right now? No. Like, these are like phrases that are low status. It makes us look salesy, pushy, and aggressive. High status is what Sharran just did. Hey, I actually don't even really like, I'm only knocking on your door because I got some buyers and I told them that I would do this. I'm not even really looking to list your property.
Yeah.
That's a great example of a high status approach towards what they're already receiving, which is a lot of low status offers. So I like the contrast there. Uh, Another angle, just to build on this, I have a crazy idea that I want to run you by. It's probably illegal, so we're gonna have to check,
I,
right,
I
with
like it even
lawyers.
more.
Okay,
I like it
so
even more.
that's the hook. But let me give you a script that we used recently. My friend Lourdes sells really high end luxury in South Florida. She was marketing to these $20+ million expires in her area. And one of the homes is a great home, went on the market, overpriced, didn't sell. It's been sitting there for a while. So this guy's been getting, I mean, think about how many people are
Yeah.
bombarding this dude
Yeah.
is probably extraordinary. So he actually called Lourdes back on this letter that we sent. And I'm going to give you the opening line of the letter, not the whole letter because it would just be too long, but let me give you the opening line of the letter. It says, now that your home didn't sell, you've had a wave of agents promising you they can, quote, get the deal done. You've heard the story before. You're not buying it. At this point, you're frustrated, disappointed, and likely pretty annoyed because your phone hasn't stopped ringing for the last 2 weeks. If a home doesn't sell, it's for 3 reasons. Number one, it's priced incorrectly. Number two, it didn't get exposure. And number three, it wasn't presented properly. Now, if you believe the reason your home didn't sell is because number one, you don't need another agent, you just need to lower the damn price. And I mean, and so it goes on to kind
So
of,
good.
right. And so the idea is like, hey, we identify your problem, we communicate in a way that makes you feel like you're heard, and then we give you advice that is not self-centered or selfish. By saying, hey, if you believe the reason your home didn't sell is because the price, it's pricey high, then lower the price. You don't need another agent. No other agent ever does this. They just go right into pitch mode. So this one got a $25 million listing appointment for an expired. She didn't take it because the real reason was number one. All right.
Yeah.
And she's like, I'm not taking this listing. It's not going to sell. But she may get it. But she did get a relationship or conversation. If she gets enough of those, we know she'll get some quality listings.
But Jimmy, let me react to that very quickly.
Sure.
So the first thing I want to say is, for the chunky portion of the letter that you read,
Yeah.
had nothing to do with her.
Correct. Yeah.
Most other interesting letters that I see are, hey, we just sold, like it starts with, we just did blank.
Yeah.
I just sold this. I did X. I did Y. Did you see this? None of that, right? That whole thing was, hey, I know it's been a few weeks. It's all about the seller. It's about you. You didn't get this. You probably are feeling this way. That shows empathy, which is great.
Yeah.
And then says it probably didn't sell for one of these three reasons. Now you get them to connect with you on one of those three reasons. And you're saying if it's number one, you should just, like, it is so, the first third of that letter was about them.
Correct.
Which is so insanely powerful. Here's the second. Sometimes agents, for some reason, believe that just because they don't read, that clients don't read. Mm-hmm. So we use this personal operating bias on our clients in a lot of ways. So I get agents will tell me all the time, well, I don't respond to email, so my clients won't respond to email. And I was like, well, you get 1,700 messages a day. They get 99. And you actually, if you craft it well enough, they will respond. And the power of actually spending a little bit of time and utilizing good language and good words and putting some thoughtfulness into the letter, like good letters get read. People used to tell me, hey, Sharran, you can't write a daily email. And I go, that's not true. I just have to make it good. They need to be like, man, this is good stuff. I get Seth Godin's email every single day. I read every single one of them.
Yeah.
So I've not rarely, sometimes you get a B plus, but he writes good stuff every single day. Mm-hmm. So keeping it about them and believing that just because you're off on the medium doesn't mean that medium is not the right fit for them is good to understand personal bias in this.
It is completely true. And I think anyone who's listening right now, we have to always take inventory of the biases that you have right now that probably no longer serve you. And I think this is a good example of that, which is sometimes we say like, well, I don't open my mail. First off, you don't need 100% of people to open the mail and read it. I mean, it's horseshoes first and foremost. If we're getting close to the target, get people to raise, like, I mean, we're not selling widgets here. I was at a conference many years ago, and I was on a panel with a Zillow rep and an Open Door rep. And first off, I think they hated my guts because I'm an obnoxious person from Boston. So, but the guy on the Open Door was talking about how they want to revolutionize the home buying experience. So it's like shopping at a grocery store. And I'm like, buying a house is not the same thing as buying a tomato. And And I'll tell you right now, the thing that everyone is missing right now around this whole idea of like streamlining this information. So, they'll throw around words like, AI is going to replace the real estate agent, or AI is going to drive the cost of buying and selling significantly down because of commission. I want to educate everybody on this because it's important. For AI to be effective, it is all about what it is consuming to develop its output. So the data, the information it's consuming, it can only ever be as good as the information which it consumes. Now, if you think about this, Sharran, I'm on the paper in front of me, I'm drawing two circles. One circle's this big, the other circle's this big. You can see the camera.
Yep.
This big is the amount of information in the world that is well documented, that can be crawled, that can be indexed, that can be developed models around. And then this information is all the information that is unstructured, undocumented in our minds, in our heads. And so the idea, until AI can begin to develop insight on ideas it doesn't actually have information on, we have nothing to worry about in real estate.
Right.
So we have, and this is an important thing people just always screw up, is AI, the models will only ever be as good as the information which they consume. And when there's information that's not well documented, I mean, a local real estate agent has an extraordinary amount of insight about their local market that that isn't available online. And I know the idea that something isn't available online seems like that's not true, but it absolutely is. They've
Yeah.
been in every house. They've driven down every street. They know which areas are like, I'm going through a nice neighborhood in my area, and the person's like, oh, those are some great houses. I'm like, yeah, but there's a lot of through traffic here because it connects to this road over here. And like you would literally never know that unless you knew that area. And by
Right.
the way, it's not documented in the description of any of the listings. Hey, a shitload of cars drive through this area every day, right? Like, and so I say all of that to say that for us in real estate, this the information you have in your brain is, if you can communicate that externally, it is some of the best marketing you can do to attract clients, and you should get
Yeah.
excited about that.
I'm in full agreement with that. And you and I use a tactic which I will, we'll share with folks right now, which I which I which is the dog whistle.
Yeah,
Dog whistles are really important, and so you'll hear Jimmy or me either in emails or on stage. We'll talk about it. We say, hey, you'll start an email with, hey, if you're looking for a home in Worcester that has a porch,
yeah,
then read the email below. So literally you're calling out to that person. Or hey, if you've tried to buy a home 3 times this year and have not succeeded, then I probably have an option for you. Hey, if you're thinking about selling your home in the next 3 years, then read this message. I think you
mm-hmm.
can do that in a video. I think you can do that on email. I think you can do that in a social post. I've actually started to see a lot more kind of dog whistles in straight videos. Hey, I do it often too. Hey, if you're a real estate agent anywhere in North America, then this video is for you.
Yeah,
Literally, that allows you to instantly bifurcate the audiences. And you and I you like to use that a lot because then you can have assumptive rapport and go right into the content right after.
exactly. Yep,
Right. And that's
exactly.
the big key. Otherwise, everyone else is like, well, how would I start this? What if I have somebody else in my SOI reading this? You don't have to worry about any of that. And I think
Correct.
that's what Jimmy's really like. That's what we talk a lot about with understanding how to do direct response is how do you get to rapport really fast so you can make the ask, make the call to action, make all of that.
I wrote a line recently that I think perfectly encapsulates this idea of dog whistle. And it was a Just Sold campaign that we generated, like I think a $1.5 million listing off of. And the opening line was, "If you're in your forever home, ignore this letter."
So good.
And so it's a little bit of the reverse dog whistle, right? It's like saying, it's
Yeah.
like you can say what's still dog whistle, but it's like, what are you for versus what are you against?
Right.
Just clearly state that. So, as you said, I think is a really nice way of framing it, Sharran, this idea of like assumptive rapport. Now, if I know you've read if you read that line, you keep reading, I now can talk to you as if I have it's this kind of crazy phenomenon, which I'm gathering information from you just by the fact that you're reading this thing,
Right.
which now allows me to communicate in a much clearer way, in a much more persuasive way when I'm trying to maybe get you to raise your hand.
Well, and 100%. And a lot of the agents that we work with will say things like, should I segment my list before I send this? Well,
Sure,
yes, that would be great. But if you don't want to spend time segmenting your list and you just want to send the email out because I would much rather you get the email out,
sure,
then you should just dog whistle it up front because it'll segment with the content. And that's sometimes
yeah.
you don't have to segment with the tags. You can just send the email out, right? But if you're on the curator platform, you just say filter and hit send. Like you could do that too.
You can, but the thing about the future of CRMs is no CRMs, in my opinion, uh, which is to say that I believe, like I've seen 1,000 CRMs and then some, and I've never seen one that's organized.
Mhm.
And I think because they have a natural tendency to become very disorganized. And what Sharon's talking about right now is like you can have imagine how amazing this is. You can have a woefully disorganized CRM and still extract all the value out of it
Mhm.
by using the dog whistle technique. And
Yeah.
without having to filter, without having to segment, without having to worry about smart lists, like it's okay. Look, your disorganized CRMs, it's okay. Like
Yeah.
don't spend any time fixing it. Just create better marketing. Like the best, here's your clip for Instagram, Sharran. The best way to organize your CRM is to have better marketing. Like that is it.
This brings me to a good tactical topic, which
Sure.
I think it's one of my favorite things about kind of us playing on ideas together is when I see you share something that you've done and it's
Yep.
worked, I instantly go to how can I extend that to a different medium?
Yep.
And I think that folks instantly miss the opportunity. So I want to maybe I'll call this out. I'll give a good example, and then maybe you can talk to it. Which so I talk about this deal of the week idea often, and you said,
Sure.
hey, if deal of the week is working on email, it should work on social as well. So you started saying, hey, well, let's start doing the stories deal of the week where people say yes, no, I'm interested in this. Is this great? Is this not? And now it generates conversation, right?
Yep.
And then you had Jason Pantana, who's brilliant. He said, "Hey, I'm going to take this deal of the week idea, and then I'm going to swap it to a drop of the week, which is you're going to see a lot of price drops." And I
Yep.
think what Jason was trying to say was, "Hey, use this drop of the week idea to like really activate buyers in your database." And now agents literally started doing drop of the week, and I'm like, I messaging the agents. Nobody knows what a drop of the week is. Like
Sure.
he was
Yeah.
explaining this concept, but you
Yeah.
should say this week's price drop. That's way
Yeah.
more English centric than that.
Yeah.
So it's the one idea that you can start to see translated as a text, as an email, etc. I know that you start to do that often. Like when a direct mail piece happens, you're like, hey, how can I convert this to digital? When an ad happens, how can I convert this to a reel? Is there anything that you have kind of worked on recently, which has taken one thing that's worked in one spot and transferred it to something else?
Yeah. The concept that I think about or how I define it is land and expand.
Mm.
Jim Collins, famous
Yeah,
author
yeah.
of Good to Great, and my favorite book that I read many years ago, maybe just favorite because I read at the right time, was How the Mighty Fall, which is just such a great
Mm.
title. He says, fire bullets than cannonballs. And so the idea is with any marketing campaign, I almost always start with a tweet or a post, something very lightweight, something that I can get kind of immediate reaction to. So before I like my level of investment is directly correlated to sort of the projected impact of it. So if I am, let's say, as an example, trying to figure out an idea, I'm going to tweet it, I'm going to text it, I'm going to post it. Takes me very little time. And do I get the reaction that I was hoping to get, as an example? And if that does well, then I start to translate it into mediums that take a little, or distribution channels that take a little bit more time. So
Mm.
a tweet becomes an email becomes an Instagram reel, an Instagram reel becomes a 30-minute talk at an event, as an example. So that's kind of the trajectory that I normally follow. As it relates to, which is why you should be posting more and more and more, not just for the sake
Yes.
of getting attention, but for getting some, so to get some signal in the noise, like what's really working with my audience.
By the way, just hold your thought on that one. I just wanted you to know this. You are just like the mighty. Alex Hormozy told me that literally all his content ideas are all generated by performance of his tweets. So
Yeah,
he'll tweet an idea. If people like it, he'd be like, okay, I'm going to make a reel on that. If he tweets an idea, people like it, I'm going to make it. So all his content, and then his team bunches all the content together, and then that becomes a YouTube video. So he's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
but for him, he just keeps tweeting as he's constantly experimenting.
That's it. It's and I think you learn this when you are trying to figure out ways not just to produce a lot of content but make a lot of impact. You're trying to figure out ways to kind of call your shot. I don't want to spend an hour shooting a reel if I don't have a high degree of confidence it's gonna do well, as an
Right.
example. So I'll give you an example of one that we just did recently. So I'm so insanely jealous of your deal of the week video that has 1.2 million views. That I said, you know what, I'm gonna take that idea and I'm gonna apply it to the deal of the week SOI text. And so the thinking on this, Sharran, was quite simply every agent who's watching right now probably is underperforming as it relates to the number of referrals they could get.
Mm-hmm.
And so say, well, why are they not getting as many referrals as they should get, as they could get, as they deserve? Well, it's because they're not asking the right questions to their database, engaging them in a meaningful way. Well, why aren't they doing that? Well, they don't want to bombard them. They don't want to
Mm-hmm.
annoy them. They don't know what to say. Okay. Well, then how do we overcome some of those really, first principle issues they have around engaging their SOI? And so I took Sharon's deal of the week email, which is, hey, here's the best deal in the area. Check it out. Reply to this email. I said, what if we just text our SOI that? And the script was basically saying, and we use a bunch of psychology in this, but it's like, hey, Sharon, I'm reaching out because I just, I got some insider info. I came across a home that's hitting the market the next day. Here's why I love it. I know that I know a bunch of people who are thinking about making a move. That's just, priming them. Like they're probably like, well, yeah, now that you mentioned I do. Is this worth sharing?
Mm-hmm.
And that way, if they say yes, now I can say, great, just like intro to me via text message.
Mm-hmm.
Now all of a sudden, I can text 10 people in my SOI every week. Let's say I've got a database of 250 past clients. I can text 10 people every week and likely generate 20 high intent, high
Yeah.
quality referrals, never have to pay a profit crushing referral fee and not, have to door knock or cold call if I'm just willing to kind of take what is already a great campaign and translate it to another medium for a different outcome. So that's an example of one that we coach. And listen, I hope people are doing this. I mean, every day I want to buy a real estate company so I can just go out there and turn it into a lab and test these ideas.
Dude, well, we have agents that can. I'll tell you just to. I've seen that, and I think either both you or I have done some version of this, which is with your SOI. A lot of people don't want to burn them out, so you
Yep.
can just use the. You can just use the. Hey, I don't know if this is. I'm not sure if this is for you. Phrase up front. Hey, I'm not sure if
Sure.
this is for you, but I came across this. Is it worth sharing? Is it worth sharing? Is such a powerful, soft
Yeah.
close to that because it's not a call to action. It is a request for an invitation. It's so
Correct.
powerful, right? And
Correct.
so I love that. There's this guy. I don't know if you. I would love for you to meet him. By the way, he was my first real estate coach. His name is Fred Wilson.
Okay.
Fred lives in Palm Springs, California. He has sold roughly 50 homes a year for the last 30 years in a row. It's
Mm.
just him and an assistant. He has no marketing, no website, no business card, no
Yeah.
IDX feed, no email marketing, no database, nothing,
Yeah.
nothing, right? And here's the craziest part, Jimmy. Fred takes 3 months off a year. So he's gone July, August, September. Gone.
Yeah.
Like, as in nothing happens July, August, September. He's gone to his lake house, right?
Yeah.
But when he comes back on October 1, he has 2, 3 deals under contract,
Mm-hmm.
which is insane because there's no
Yeah.
marketing.
I'm aware.
And
Yeah.
those 3 deals under contract or 2, 3 people he talked happened that day, that morning.
Yeah.
And every 6 weeks, Fred calls me. Every 6 weeks. I always have an offer in progress with Fred. He will call me. He's like, hey, Sharran, this is a business call. And I laugh because that's his kind of signature thing. And he goes, what would you say if I told you, which is like, I love that line, by the way.
Yes.
What would you say if I told you that I have a property that would pay you to own it?
Mm-hmm.
He has used that line on me for 7 years. And I think I've written, I don't know, 25 offers. And
Yeah.
he'll say, hey, Sharran, what would you say if I told you that I had a property that would pay you to own it? And I'm like, what do you mean, Fred? Oh, I'm so glad you asked. There's this Airbnb that is right next to, and then he's telling
Yeah.
me about it. He goes, if you put in $200K, it's $1 million investment and it will pay you $3,000 a month over and above. Like, would that be interesting to you? And I'm
Yeah.
like, it's so insane because every time his favorite line, what would you say if I told you that I had a
Yeah.
property that would pay you to own it? And he's used that line on me and I know it's coming. I haven't even memorized.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what we often think is we shouldn't call a private client or someone in our sphere just because they bought something from us. It doesn't mean that they don't want to buy something else.
Yeah.
And we just assume that their quote real estate needs are done because they bought a house from us.
The biggest mistake we make, Sharran, is we just nurture them. Like, what does it actually mean, right? I mean, like, it's a concept that's like it's the if we were masterminding on this, 'cause I think we have to come up with another word for it, because I know you have scolded me every time I use the word past clients, and you have now conditioned me to say SOI or private clients now, and so I've had to unlearn that bad habit. But like Amazon, if I think about the companies that I buy the most amount of things from, it's like they don't nurture me.
Correct.
They put opportunities in front of me, and then I decide whether I'm going to buy or not buy. And
Yeah.
I think that I think it's time, and it's gonna be controversial, Sharran, but it is. Here's another clip for you for Instagram. I think it's time to kill the word nurture.
Agreed.
I think we have to replace it with something that represents what we're ultimately trying to do, which is maintain these relationships and give the consumer a more actionable role than what exists today. So instead of saying, "Hey, we're just going to drip on them and then let them self-select when they're ready," why aren't we presenting options to them?
Right.
Because I think in many instances, as you said with this Fred Wilson story, which I love, it's like Fred is actively presenting options to his customers. He's not. You're. Let me ask you this: how many times over the last 7 years have you called Fred versus Fred's called you?
Zero.
Okay, so you've called him 0 times, and he's called you every few months for the last 7 years. That is the opposite of nurture is too passive. It's too you're playing kind of too soft. Like he's actually proactively reaching out. And so we got. I don't have any brilliant idea right now, Sharran, for the name, but you and I have got to come up with a better name than nurture because I think that actually allows agents to put on autopilot, which is the worst thing they could be doing in this scenario.
So you're so good. And the crazy part is Fred said the same thing to me. And he said, instead of calling people to check in,
Mm-hmm.
I am a vending machine of opportunity. He's like,
Yeah.
I vend opportunity. I just call them to see if they want a Coke or Pepsi today. Or
Yeah.
maybe they want a Starry. I don't know. But this is all about vending opportunity. And dude, he coined this phrase. He called it a proportunity, a property opportunity. He's like, I have a opportunity. And he goes,
Yeah.
he'll say, how many of you have a opportunity? And no one knows what it is. He goes, how many of you have a deal? Great. That's a opportunity.
Yeah.
You should be literally speaking about that deal over and over again, because now you embed in people's mind that anytime it comes to real estate, you have access to all the deal flow. Which is
Yes.
why I don't think it's a bad idea to, interview the local restaurants and be the local mayor and all of that. But now, if what is branding, right? The personal brand, you've shared this with me, Mark Davison has shared this with me, is when they think of Jimmy Mackin, do they think of the local pizza place?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's weird. That's weird. Like that's
Yeah.
not the job. Like people, you want the association. Like you want to be like, hey, when I think of Jimmy, I think of great real
Yeah.
estate ideas. When that's what you want. So when you say, hey, I'm thinking of this agent, I think about deals. And if we can continue to do a local podcast, we can continue to make content, we can continue to do all of that. Which is why, by the way, big shout out to Jason Cassidy. I had this and I shared this idea randomly with him, and I said you should talk about other things that are happening in San Diego and tie it back into real estate. So he's starting to talk about these other things, and they're not performing well. And I said that's okay, because that's how you experiment and you learn from this stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so it's in the name of nurture, we do dumb things.
It's a great idea. I looked up, by the way, I was looking up other words, and you tell me what you think of this one. So maybe you and I can start a campaign, which is to replace the word nurture with the word cultivate. So because cultivate, the technical definition of cultivate is in obviously farmers use it to prepare and grow crops, but it's this idea of like improvement, growth,
Mm-hmm.
caring as an example. So I think maybe it's more active than nurture, which is much more
Yeah,
passive. So we're going to workshop this. We'll come back to you guys with what
good.
we've come
It's
up with
good.
here.
Yeah.
But I
The-
like it. I like the idea of like because we're trying to cultivate opportunities within our private clients, within our SOI, and you can't cultivate something if you're not actively, working it, which I think is exactly what Fred is doing. And by the way, I love these old school agents who have essentially said, hey, technology, we're just going to skip it. Like it's like it reminds me of the great quote from the CEO of Restoration Hardware in the early 2000s or late 2000s, early 2010s. The furniture industry was constantly driving customers through discounts, and he had the brilliant idea that, well, if memberships have worked for Costco's and Sam's Clubs and other types of retailers, why couldn't memberships work for a furniture store? And obviously, everyone thought that was a stupid idea. He's like, that's never going to work. So he introduced the Restoration Hardware membership program, which I think is a couple $100 a year. They generate $100 million before they sell an overpriced lamp just from that membership program today. I mean, that's which is mind blowing. And he said in the interview when they asked him why did you do it at the beginning when he was announcing it, he goes, "We observed that the furniture industry was in a race to the bottom, and we decided not to participate." And that always stuck with me, this idea of like not participating with the normal trends. So someone like Fred, when he sees all of his competition chasing X, Y, or Z, he's like, no, I'm going to focus on my opportunities. I'm going
Well,
to cultivate these relationships. I love that.
I'll tell you what cultivation. I'll give you the 10-second story that Fred told me. I was actually there when he did this. So I'm with Fred. He gets this call, and
Yeah.
he takes the call, and he puts it on speaker. And this lady says, "Hey, I work for so and so research firm. We are pricing some properties for hedge funds in the Palm Desert market.
Yeah.
If I found in my research that you had sold a few of these. Would it be okay if I asked you just for some price opinion associated with these?" And Fred's like, "Sure, but can I ask you a question first?" And he says, "Yeah." She goes, "How many of these markets are you calling around the U.S.?" And she's like, "Well, we're calling agents in all over the Western United States to get this pricing." And he goes, "Okay, well, I'm happy to give you all this information, but when we're done, I have one request of you, which won't cost you any money. Would you be open to that?" And she said, "Yes." And he said, "Okay." And then he gives her all the broker price opinion. And then she says, "Well, you said you had a question for me." And he says, "Yes." He's like, "The next time you talk to a real estate agent or a broker or a consumer in a different part of the country, I would love for you to say that if they asked about investing, et cetera, I'd love for you to just say, hey, if you're thinking about buying a property that would pay you to own it, you should call my friend Fred Wilson in Palm Springs. He's done $12 million in the first 90 days
Mm-hmm.
by getting a telemarketer to prospect for him,
Yes.
for him,
Yes.
right?"
That's
He's such a
amazing.
he's amazing. Like, so he uses every idea to basically say, now I'm going to release an evangelist into the world because I was open to talk to her because we had a multi-status conversation, right? He didn't want to go
That's
low status
amazing.
by saying what it is, which is insane, right?
Yeah.
Um,
That is a completely out of the box, insane distribution channel.
oh my gosh. Like I think it would be fascinating if you and I had Fred on and we just
Yeah.
peppered him with this stuff and see how he would handle it.
I love that.
And he's so good because he literally taught me the business from the ground up. I didn't know anything about the real estate business.
Well,
And
the thing I love is I'm now going to start every phone conversation with whoever I call. Hi, Sharran. This is a business call, which I
I
love.
mean, it's so funny, right? So before we go, I want to.
Yes.
I know that you and I can do a little machine gun rapid fire on some interesting tactics that have been working for us. What I will offer is maybe we limit it to two each.
Sure.
Something that is implementable, something that you like right now. And I'll actually kick it off so that you can and then we'll go 1 2 1 2 and then we'll wrap with that. So here's
Sure.
an idea that I have that's tactically seems to be working. A lot of our agent friends are making a lot of content, and they make this piece of content, they see whether it performs, and then they're like, "Oh crap, that didn't do well. Let me make another one. Oh, this did okay, cool. Let me do another one. Oh crap, this didn't perform." So when I see a lot of these pieces of content, call it 10 days worth of content, generally there seems to be one piece of content, short form maybe, that's doing better. Well, if that's the case, Jimmy and I would offer this idea that you should put a little bit of money behind something that is already performing well. That means that your creative is working. That means your audience is liking it. That means organically the algorithm likes it. And it's some easy way to say, hey, I'm going to put $1 a day for 10 days behind something that's already proven to work so that you don't have to always go back and say, can I make more like this? People think you have to make more like it. Instead, you just have to get that thing in front of more people.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. It's double down on your winners.
Yeah.
You know, that's a oh, like, I mean, always double. Like when you look at the performance of your marketing, oftentimes you'd attribute like 90% of your results from few campaigns. Double down on your winners. I'll give you one that I'm obsessed with, and I'll give you the context on this. I believe that every single agent who's watched this podcast should spend time sending their clients preemptively a CMA or I'll call it what I would call it, a professional home value report for their clients, because no one knows what a CMA is. But for Inside Baseball, like, hey, I think you should identify 3 to 5 clients to send them an updated professional home value report as a value add to trigger some reciprocity, get the customer excited. But what you should do next is you should turn the corner and do something a lot of really smart marketers are doing, which is working in public. So if I did a CMA for Sharran, or let's call it professional home value report for Sharran, and let's say in the last 12 months, Sharran gained $135,000 in equity. Well, this is amongst a lot of the negativity around the real estate market crashing, the real estate market, now slowing down significantly. Oh my God, the world's going to come to an end. I would then go to social media and I would start off by saying, I just did I just updated my clients with a professional home value report. They gained, and I may even give their reaction. Sharran was really surprised to learn that he gained $135,000 in equity in the last 12 months. And that might be an Instagram story. And I might have a poll that says, would you like one of these for
So
your
good.
home? Yes, absolutely. And so what I'm doing is, if I'm doing the work, and the concept here is called like a marketable moment, Sharon, is like if I'm doing the work that I think now I can then tell a story about, I'm then
So good.
using my distribution channels to kind of go out there and post. And I've got clients who are doing this right now, Sharon, who are getting inbound high intent sellers. And the trigger was they did a CMA for somebody else, right? They did a CMA for somebody else. And they're going to like, oh yeah, they didn't even think that was possible. And I think that's like, I'm just a huge fan of working in public when you're doing these professional home value reports. And I would use social media. By the way, I would use Facebook profile. Talk about an underutilized, we spent a decade building those things, and a lot of people aren't using them for business anymore. Good opportunity there for sure.
Such a good idea. And especially, I loved what you talked about, how you take an existing piece of content that you did or like working in public, and then you can use that to say, hey, would you like something like this?
Yeah.
I'll piggyback on that idea. I during the right when the pandemic was kind of done, and buyers were not getting exactly what they wanted and homes are moving fast. A lot of our agent friends were cultivating multiple
Yeah.
buyers at the same time. And they were like, man, I have these 10 potential buyers. They're all looking in 10 different areas. I feel like I'm out of touch with them if I'm not talking to them. So I came up with this idea, Jimmy, called the Friday Buyer Advantage. And it's a
Mm.
really simple tool where I started getting agents to pick 4 to 5, no more than 5 properties that are in the marketplace, that
Yeah.
in their market area, and put it on one tab in each browser. That can be on your IDX site, that can be on Zillow, what have you. It doesn't matter. But you have 5 live tabs. And you
Yeah.
hit a Loom recording that essentially says, hey, this is Sharran, and this is going out to all my private clients who are looking to buy a home in the next 3 to 6 months here in Laguna Beach. I picked out 5 properties that you need to know that are actually benchmarking the current market right now. Here's this home. This is the lowest priced home in Laguna, and I think this is why it's going to sell fast. Here's this one, which is 27 million. It's the highest priced home in Laguna. I wanted to frame the market for you. This home is going to, this whole third home is an investment property, but it's going to sell fast. This home is going to sit longer, and this home, third home, I think is going to get a price adjustment in the next 3 weeks. If you have seen a property that you want me to run some analysis on, can you just reply and tell me the address, and I'm happy to run it down for you. Now you
Mm-hmm.
send that to the entire buyer database. They get to see you walking them through the 3 to 5 properties in the market. So you frame the market. No one else has done that for them. And
Yeah.
then you do the call to action saying, can I do a little deep dive into something like this for you?
Yeah. I saw, I don't think people realize this. Uh, when you, as a real estate agent, chances are, if you're studying the market every day, you're probably logging into your MLS every day, I would think. The MLS looks like it's insider trading for the average consumer.
Yes.
It's so ugly. It's so raw. It's so like, there's so many more filters. And I actually think I've seen people do this in the past. I'm glad you remind me of this idea. When you're like, you have access to these realtor tools that they don't have access to, it's kind of makes it feel like they've got some information that is not publicly available online. So as an example, I may record myself, hey, every day, to help my clients every day, I study what's happening in the market. One of the really interesting things we have as realtors, is we can see what's coming on the market in the next week before the rest of the public. And you're not disclosing it or sharing it. You're showing the fact that you have that visibility as an example. I just think it's a really cool way to demonstrate it gives the consumer a compelling reason to reach out, I think, is what I'm trying to say
Totally.
here.
So good.
Uh, Last thing, as we land the plane here, and this was fun, Sharran. I mean, this was fun. It's always good to chat with you, my friend. I think hopefully we'll have some clips on this session. Last thing for you is, I am a massive, massive fan. I got a message on Instagram from my buddy Steve, who sent me a check for $19,000. Picture of it. He said, all it said was thanks. It was a picture of a $19,000 check. And it was off of a strategy that I refer to as the appointment sales letter, which is, if I'm going to go on an appointment, I'm going to market that appointment.
Sell the appointment.
Right, so I'm going to sell the appointment. I'm going to sell that appointment as hard as I sell the listing.
Right.
Okay. And I think you and I have talked about this before, and people don't appreciate this idea. We covered examples and other talk about the email. But what I would actually do is I'd make a list. If I'm going to go on, let's say I booked an appointment with Sharran to potentially discuss listing his house or selling his house. Let's say it came in through a referral. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get a list of the 100 closest homes that have owned the house maybe for 7+ years, have a lot of equity. And then I'm going to get that list and I'm going to send them a letter in the mail that says, hey, Sharran, this is Jimmy Mackin calling Mackin or reaching out from Mackin Realty. I'm going to be in the area next Tuesday at 1 p.m. because I'm discussing or I'm meeting with your neighbor to discuss the idea of selling their property. I'm going to be reaching out to everybody because I'm in the area. I'm going to reach everybody and offer an updated home value report because when this house sells, it's going to impact your home's value. If you'd like to get your copy, reply to, text me. Here's my phone number. I'm giving you the raw and rough version of this idea. But this concept of of market the appointment, you can do it through a direct mail campaign. You can do it through a phone calling script. You can do it through an email campaign. You can go on Instagram, like our buddy Chris Benahim. There's a million different ways you can promote this idea. But the big takeaway here is you need to promote your appointments as aggressively as you promote your listings. And when you
even more aggressively.
even more. Because when you do, your appointments are gonna multiply. And I mean, that is when the magic happens, my friend.
Dude, I love it so much. And I'll tell you I love the sell the appointment idea. I love the sell the appointment email as well. But what I love the most about it is because we all, just from a matter of kind of opportunity and conversion math, we get more appointments than we get listings. We get more appointments than we get sales. We get more appointments than we get under contract. So I would love to market more of the stuff. I have more reasons to market, more reasons to reach out. And you don't have to wait for the listing to actually market it. Now I can market the appointment. I think it's one of the, to the consumer, it's like, man, Jimmy always has stuff going on. And that's an insane perception to kind of put out.
If you want something done, give it to a busy person, Sharran. So, showing ourselves that we're busy, that's like showing that's how we stay busy in this industry.
So good. So here's what I'm going to do. So quick call to action for all of you as you're listening. Both Jimmy and I love sharing these tactical ideas. The one thing that I would offer for you to do is find Jimmy and me on Instagram. And both of us have a Instagram broadcast channel where we both, anytime we get a good idea, normally I just take Jimmy's and just send it to my list. But most of the time we take our best ideas that we're working on and have the raw version of it and we share it right on the Instagram channel. There's no fluff. There's no spam. There's nothing. You get the raw and the real tactics right away. So go on Instagram, find Jimmy and me, and then get to our broadcast channels. They're 100% free, and we're here to kind of serve you and give you great ideas. Jimmy, man, I appreciate you so much. Thank you for spending time with us.
Great seeing you, Sharran.